You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Proof Text. I am Michael Halcomb, and today I have the privilege of being with our guest, Dr. John Meade. And this is our first time ever talking, ever meeting. And so, John, the way we sort of greet each other here in Hawaii, we just say, how's it? So I want to ask you, how's it?
It's going great, Michael. It's going great.
Excellent. So, all right. So, Dr. Meade, you did your PhD at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, Louisville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
He's a professor of Old Testament and a co-director of the Text and Canon Institute at Phoenix Seminary. And I think you said you've been there like 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
You've written and published one of your books, The Biblical Canon Lists from Early Christianity. And so I want to talk about some of this stuff, but let's just start with you. Where did you grow up? Like, where are you from?
Yeah, I grew up just outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, hence the hat behind you? Yeah.
Yes, the Red Sox hat, and you can't see it; it's off camera. But I've got my Celtics hat, kind of ready to go as well. So I'm excited about the Celtics with home court advantage throughout the playoffs. So
yeah, and they look good this year.
They do. They've looked good the last few.
They have.
Always fingers crossed with them. But grew up just outside of Boston. We were on the little commuter rail, so maybe 25 minutes outside of the city. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you grow up? Did you grow up in a Christian household? Did you grow up going to church, or what? How did you get? Yeah. All right.
Yeah. No. I'm eternally grateful that I did grow up in a Christian home, and with parents bringing me to church whenever the doors were opened, and that's for whatever reason today those testimonies seem just a little bit of a drag, I guess. I don't know, but I could not be happier with the way God had mercy on me that way.
What faith tradition did you grow up in?
Yeah, so Baptistic. In Massachusetts, predominantly, Roman Catholic my dad's parents were Irish Catholic. And but my mom's side would have aligned with the Baptist tradition, generally speaking. Not Southern Baptist. I didn't become aware of the Southern Baptist until I went to college in Columbia, South Carolina. So.
Okay, what college is that?
Columbia International University.
Oh yeah, all right,
yep.
CIU. All right.
Yes, correct.
So, how did you get into biblical studies? Like what prompted that move?
Yeah. So in high school, I was not the best student, Michael. In high school, I don't even mind putting this out here on this podcast today. Yeah. But what was fascinating is by my latter years in high school, I started taking an interest in theology. I just found myself reading like these old systematic theologies, like by Louis Berkhoff or Charles Haw. I know, this is so weird. So I didn't, my friends were like, "What are you doing?" I would even wade into Jonathan Edwards' sermons, just trying to understand this faith, But by that time, the Lord had brought in some youth pastors and youth directors to the church we were at, and they kind of saw like, okay, something's a little bit different about John. And so maybe we need to start nudging him towards Bible college, And of course, the teachers at my school are like, "Man, we're so happy you're reading that stuff, but why can't you just do your biology homework?" I'm like, I don't know. It should fascinate me, but I'm so disinterested. Anyways, so it was, so that's kind of how it got started. Like there were some youth pastors. My dad was just a layman, but loved to read in those days, and so just I just kind of got sort of pushed, so to speak, like not like lovingly to do this sort of thing, and then once I wound up at CIU. That's where I was a biblical languages major there, and so the flame for biblical studies was not just lit but stoked there, I would say.
Wow.
And you know how it is, Michael. You wind up in a new setting, new mentors, new nudges. John, we don't tell everybody this, but you should go to seminary. so so anyways, that's how I wound up in Louisville, Kentucky. At Southern
Wow.
Seminary.
So you've been now in Arizona for a while at Phoenix Seminary, and I've associated your name with that, but more than anything, I've just associated your name and your face with the text and canon, really textual criticism, the Text and Canon Institute. So tell us a little bit about that. And as you're doing that, I'm gonna share on the screen so people can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So here we go. Tell us about the Text and Canon Institute.
Yeah, so the Text and Canon Institute, or the TCI, was hatched back in January of 2019. So just a little over 5 years ago. Again, I came to Phoenix Seminary in 2012 to continue the tradition of learning languages here, Hebrew especially for me. There was already a Greek teacher here. But by 2017, we hired Peter Gurry as a New Testament and Greek professor. He had just graduated from Cambridge University with his PhD in New Testament textual criticism. And so kind of from that point on, we just really started to think like, man, what is God doing here to bring two textual critics to a small to modest sized seminary here in Phoenix? I don't know what your experience, Michael, is, but very few seminaries have even one expert in textual criticism.
Right.
Even a large
class, even most.
Right. Exactly. Maybe not even a class. I know. And so, and yet here we are with like two guys who did their dissertations in this area, who want to continue research in this area. How do we organize our scholarly efforts? And so really from 2017, 2018, that conversation was percolating. And I think in the summer of 2018, we had decided on something like the Text and Canon Institute. And from here, we actually reached out to a bunch of advisors, folks like Daniel Wallace from Dallas, Peter Gentry from Southern, Peter Williams, Dirk Yonkin from Tyndale House, Chuck Hill from RTS, and just kind of got some good input from them in the fall of 2018. And at that point, we just said, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to call you guys an advisory board. And I think we had a logo and an email list. and we got to start somewhere. That's right. And thankfully, the Lord has, I think, really blessed it. We hear lots and lots of testimonies from folks. Now, I guess I should back up one more step. The website didn't become a reality until 2021. And on that website, which is a resource-driven website, we have tried to publish mostly beginner-type articles, what we might call on-ramping articles. So someone just says, man, I've heard that there's a difference between the Catholic Bible and the Protestant Bible. Okay. But I can't even articulate it. I just know there's a difference. I'm going to search Google. And what's interesting, if you search Catholic Protestant Bible on Google, the Text and Canon Institute's article is one of the very first links to answer that question. And so I can't tell you how many times that article has been read since 2021. And the feedback we get is, wow, like I could have gone to the History Channel, I could have gone to National Geographic, but I actually landed on a kind of a reputable site and
Yeah.
read an article that I feel like now gives me bearings. But that's not a very technical article. There's no original languages in it or anything like that. Like, it's just very accessible, and the vast majority of our articles are like that. Now, we do have some that lean towards the intermediate and advanced stages. Maybe someone has a question about textual problems in, say, Isaiah 53. That's a joke, Michael. No one has questions about textual problems in Isaiah 53.
Right.
But if ever you did, there
Not
would
that
be. That's right. There would be 5 or 6 articles on the Text and Canon Institute website that actually kind of work through each of those in turn. And so we've done some experimenting on the more advanced side as well. And we put out a new article once or twice a month. You can subscribe to receive those on the website, and you'll get a notification that there's a new article up there each time. We publish a quarterly newsletter. Probably the big thing that Guri and I are doing now is we travel to speak to churches and other groups. Yeah, we call it Scribes in Scripture, a conference on the history of the Bible. You can't call it the Text and Canon Institute conference, Michael. No one comes to that. No one's even curious about that. But if you call it something like Scribes in Scripture, we've found that the title is kind of piques people's curiosity. And so we've been, first quarter of this year, we've been on the road. We've traveled to 6 different places. A couple in the state of Arizona, but then 4 places outside. Audiences varying, but usually somewhere between 150 and 200 people. Anyway, so we're just going to see where it goes. We're going to keep going, and the church is really, really interested and curious about how it got its Bible, and that's a very, I think, fundamental question. Yeah.
Excellent. Man, well, thanks for all the great work you guys are doing. Peter has agreed to come on the podcast soon as well, and Dirk will be on here at some point soon. And so, Excellent. It seems like we've been moving in, some of the same circles have been overlapped. It's surprising we haven't really crossed paths until now. So let's talk a little bit. So you move in the world of textual criticism, and you're dealing with this question of how we got our Bible, which is a huge, as you're suggesting, just a huge issue, because I don't think the average Christian, if they were asked, any questions about that, or there was given some pushback about that they could really, most Christians I don't know could stand on 2 legs and answer, in a way that's satisfactory for a skeptic, right? And so, I mean, could you give us, I don't know, just a short, I guess, and that's kind of not fair to you, but could you give us, what would be the short answer? Like if somebody were asking you in a coffee shop or something like that and gave you a few minutes of their time, how do we get our Bible? I know it didn't just drop from the sky. Like what happened? How do we get this text?
Yeah. So, for the, and there's an Old Testament, of course, and a New, and the answers share some overlap, some similarity, of course, but then there are big differences between how you have your Hebrew Bible and your Greek New Testament. Okay, so I'll maybe stick to more of the Old Testament area as I try to answer this question in a coffee shop setting here in a few minutes.
Okay.
But I think that the best place to start is just with scribes and trying to explain how scribes operated. What did these scribes do? They copied, and I usually try to ask people how well they hand copy things, or even forget the hand copying, maybe how well they type a page or a quotation that they're trying to get on the computer, and it's like, do you make mistakes when you do that? Oh, right, I do. Sometimes my eyes play tricks on me when I'm copying things. Yes. And it turns out Michael, that's a very human thing.
Yeah.
Because we can show, doesn't matter what the language, doesn't matter what part of the world the scribe is working in, doesn't matter what time the scribe is working in. Every single biblical scribe makes these mistakes. And so then I try to show, again, working with maybe from what they might know, I ask them, have you ever looked at the footnotes in your English Bible? And they're like, wait, footnote. And if they don't, I'll just kind of open it up and I'll show them some footnotes, and they go, oh. And I said, yeah. I said, your own English Bible is actually signaling to you when there are differences in these manuscripts. And what the English translation committee, if it's the NIV, ESV, CSB, doesn't matter which one, they all have them. What they're doing is they're putting up in the text, and the part that you read is what they think the best reading is, but then down below they will signal some of the more significant textual differences, so that you are not caught unaware. And that usually goes in great directions if I'm explaining that to people, because now it's like, okay, this is not that foreign to me anymore. I can now open my own Bible and see the differences in the footnotes and the text. And now, so then I just try to explain that not all of our differences between and across translations is due to translation philosophy, because that's what a lot of people have heard. Well, there are some that are literal translations and some that are more, non-literal or dynamic, and they think, oh, okay, I get that. I said, yes, but there are actually a significant number of differences between translations that occur on the level of what text each is translating. And they go, oh, okay. So anyways, I try to unpack that for them. And then I can revisit the scribes again and try to show that in the area of the Old Testament, scribes worked with two tendencies. They worked with a very conservative copying tendency, oftentimes letter for letter. And we can show this trajectory from the Dead Sea Scrolls all the way up to our medieval Hebrew manuscripts. And they go, oh, okay. And then I kind of am quick to also show, but not all the earlier manuscripts confirm what's in the later ones. Oh, okay. Well, why is that? Well, it turns out some early scribes weren't always interested in copying letter for letter, but they also wanted to transmit an understandable and intelligible text. So they might update the grammar, they might update the language. Sometimes they're going to try to interpret hard or implied language in the manuscript, and so you might actually end up with like a longer or more expansive text at times. Oh, okay. I said, but don't be alarmed, because I think both scribes, or both methods of copying, really stem from faithfulness. These Jewish scribes are, they're being faithful to the text of Scripture often by copying letter for letter, word for word, but they're also being faithful to making sure the next generation can understand that text as well.
Yeah, that's great.
So, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I try to break it down. And that's ultimately how we get the Bible, is because these faithful scribes copied and copied and copied again for millennia. And that's how we have it.
Let's revamp our scenario a little bit.
Sure.
And I don't mean to I don't mean to sound negative toward anyone here, but this is a reality. So, oh man, Dr. Meade, it's great to meet you. I just read this great book by Bart Ehrman, and he's saying there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of errors and mistakes in the biblical manuscripts. I really don't I don't think I can trust it anymore. Now what?
Yeah. So I think the way I try to approach this is Bart's trying to compare. I think he says things like, there are more errors than words. Okay, in the Bible. Okay. Well, and I'm gonna let there are New Testament textual critics that are in a better position than I am to answer this question. But this much I know: we really have to compare apples with apples.
Yeah.
So what Bart's doing is he's taking the kind of collective, the collective errors across all the thousands of manuscripts that we have of the Greek New Testament against a standardized word count. Okay.
Yes.
If he actually took errors manuscript by manuscript by manuscript, he would realize, oh wait, these scribes are actually far more accurate when we keep them in the same manuscript. You see, across. But he wants to collectively collect the variants compared to a standard word count of the New Testament. That's how he winds up. There are more errors.
Point.
Yeah. So, and again, my friend and colleague, Dr. Gurry, he explains this far better than I do. But it's just so. It's a real sleight of hand on the part of Dr. Ehrman to make a claim like that.
Well, another thing that I've caught him doing, and I've often wondered this. Maybe I'll interview him at some point, but he is such a great. I'm sure you've seen him present live and debate, and he's hilarious. He's funny. He totally disarms every audience with humor, and he's great at that. But I've often wondered. He tells a story in one of his books where he turned in a paper on the Gospel of Mark, part about Abiathar, and he got the paper back, and it said something to the effect of, "What if Mark was wrong?" And then it was that comment. It might have been from Metzger. I don't know who was his doctoral supervisor, but it was that comment on that paper that set him on this path of, that he's now on. He's no longer a believer, but So in the field of New Testament studies, I'm sure you're aware of this, the debates about pronunciation have sort of reignited. At one time, I was sort of swirling in the middle of that. I've kind of pulled back. It's too exhausting. But, what I've realized is that pronunciation, whatever pronunciation schema one uses, it has some bearing on how they deal with textual criticism, particularly with Greek. Right, so
True.
You may have a hard time understanding some of the textual variants if you're using an Erasmian pronunciation versus like a Koine era reconstructed pronunciation. So, for example, right, the Omicron and the Omega were largely interchangeable. To the ear of the scribe or the eye of the scribe, those are the same thing. Right? As long as when that's read out loud, it produces the right word, you're good to go. And I often wonder, had he learned a better pronunciation for Greek, could all of this been avoided? But I don't know. And what I have realized is that a lot of the things that he calls errors are, in fact, just spelling variations.
Yeah, correct.
And they're not errors at all.
No, exactly. Yeah, and I also wonder how he kind of gets away with it, because in textual criticism, like from day one, you should be taught that really only the major variants, the significant errors, are the only ones that really need to be weighed, right?
Right.
We don't count mere differences between manuscripts. We try to weigh significant variance between manuscripts and ancient versions, and so he's counting variance, which is something I'm sure Bruce Metzger told him you cannot do. You should not do. Okay, so we could give other examples of this, but
yeah. Statistically, though, it's like, whoa, when you hear him talk about these.
Oh, the rhetorical punch. I mean, he's trying. He's trying to just dislodge your certainty just a little bit.
Yes.
And that's I could tell you stories from students that I've met who have sat in his classroom at UNC Chapel Hill. He'll start I don't know if it's Religion 101, but something like this. He'll start this class with a question. How many of you believe the Bible is inspired? And UNC Chapel Hill, of course, is right on the Bible Belt, right? So apparently, right, the vast majority of hands go up and say, yeah, we believe the Bible's inspired by God. And then he'll kind of ask a question about how many have read all of Harry Potter. It's like to a group of freshmen, okay? Oh, yeah. We've read all of Harry Potter. And then he quickly comes back, apparently, and he'll ask a question about, okay, now how many of you have read the Bible all the way through? And very few hands go up. And the questions are asked in that sequence for a reason, because then he follows that up with, but wait, you just said you believe the Bible's inspired and you haven't read it all the way through, but you've read Harry Potter all the way through and you don't think that's inspired, you see. And it's just trying to dislodge, certainty or
Right.
assurance just a little bit. And yeah. So it's not how I open my classes here in Phoenix, Michael, but anyhow.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that move, right? Like you're saying, the sort of like little nudge here, a little nudge there, dislodge, and then I can sort of get in and try to make some bigger arguments. Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, and I'll use humor to do it. I'll make you laugh and totally disarm you. So
Absolutely.
yeah, the rhetorical maneuvering is really genius in a lot of ways. And I don't want to talk crap about Bart, but I do know, I'm familiar with some of the stuff you're talking about. And I've read his stuff and I've seen him present. But yeah, I appreciate the wise and really gentle answers that you're offering in response to that. So let's talk just for a few minutes about, we've been talking about textual variants, and you were bringing up like significant textual variants. Yeah, can you share maybe one or two of those with you or with us, and I can pull up a text if you need me to, and we can look at it on the screen, or we can just talk about it.
Yeah, it's up to you. But one I like to show people if I'm trying to illustrate this, especially in the Old Testament. Okay. I guess I should say this too, because of Bart's work, more people are just kind of by default now interested in New Testament textual criticism. Like it's
right.
So he kind of showed that spotlight on that issue, on that area, and now all of a sudden everyone's like, well, that's where all of it is. And I go, well, true, but the Old Testament actually has its fair share of interesting textual problems too. And they're like, oh, okay, because we just thought the Old Testament was like totally stable, fine. And so one place I go is, well, Isaiah 53 might be the maybe the most, one of the more popular, famous passages in the Old Testament. And I like to show them Isaiah 53:11. There's a few other places we could go, but in Isaiah 53:11, there's a really, really interesting textual variant over what the servant is said to see. Okay. And if you're reading the ESV, it just says he will see, and then I think it's like a semicolon or a conjunction and, I can't remember, but I think it just semicolon, and then and be satisfied. Yeah, let's look at it here. Verse 11. Yeah, there we go. But you're reading the NIV there, which is good. Oh, but then the AV. Yes. No, that's right.
Pull up the ESV here.
Oh, the Step Bible's amazing, isn't it?
It is. I use it every single day.
I do too. It's such a great tool.
I was devastated when BibleWorks went away, but Step Bible has come through.
Yep, yeah. I agree. Yep. So in Isaiah 53:11, if we look at the ESV, it just says, okay, there you go with and. I couldn't remember. He will see and be satisfied. Which is an accurate translation of those medieval Hebrew manuscripts that I referred to earlier. But, which, by the way, is the kind of dominant textual tradition that our English Bibles have been based on for, the last 400 years. Okay. But recent textual analysis of Isaiah 53:11 starts to look at more than just those medieval manuscripts. It starts to look at even the Greek text there that we've got, right? You're not going to like my pronunciation, Michael.
That's all right.
Apatupanu, tes psukes, autou, dexai auto phos. And all of a sudden we have a word in there now in Greek, phos, meaning light, that is not in the medieval Hebrew manuscript tradition. And I guess, for most of the church's history, they've had this Greek translation, popularly called the Septuagint, and they've known that the word light is at least in that version, but what they couldn't tell is, was it ever in a Hebrew text? Like, we see it in Greek, it could be a translation of the Hebrew word, or but maybe but maybe not. And so they kind of had to put a pin in it. Well, fast forward to 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls are discovered. Okay. And it turns out, long story short, 3 different Dead Sea Scrolls have the word for light. Okay. And it could only be represented as he will see light and be satisfied. And so that's amazing. And I should back up too. Before those Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, the thought was, well, maybe this was like a later Christian interpretation of this Jewish translation. Maybe even some implied Gnosticism was suggested, like the seeing of light.
Right.
And but it's interesting, when those other Hebrew manuscripts came to light, pun intended, all of a sudden, it was, okay, now we have to take this seriously. This is not a later addition by the part of Christian scribes of these Greek texts. This is a Jewish reading, an early Jewish reading. And in fact, the original text of Isaiah has, he will see light. And I like this example because what it does is it shows that in verse 8, the servant dies. In verse 9, the servant is buried. And then in verse 11, we see that because of the work that he did, the suffering and vicarious work that he did, he actually is going to see light, which in the ancient world means he's going to come back from the dead.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it's not like specific, like this Messiah servant is going to be raised on the 3rd day, right? According to the scriptures, like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15. But I do think it's one of the texts that you could use to show that the suffering servant, the Messiah, is not only going to suffer and die, but he's going to come back to life. He's going to see light. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a few other places where I think this is alluded to in the New Testament. Romans 4, I think, is another place, right? He was raised for our justification. And I don't think it's by accident that, like, in the very next clause in 53:11, we're talking about the servant's vindication, you see, as a result of his work. And so a part of me thinks Paul is working with a version of Isaiah 53 that assumes a seeing of light, or a coming back to life reading. So that's a place where textual criticism, again, the doctrine of the resurrection is not based on this one verse, right? Based on this one text. But this textual variant clearly affects and influences the way we read the outcome of the servant's life and work. So, yeah.
Good.
So that's one place I like to show. It's a good difference between translations. I think you had the NIV up there at one point. They read the text light, but they translate it something like he will see the light of life. So they interpret the metaphor of seeing light as coming back to life, right? The light of life. And I think that's it's actually a good translation to help people with that. So.
Man, that's so. I've also often recognized too that when people start to go down this road of, at one time, they were Bible believing, they trusted the scripture, they had confidence in the scripture, and that starts to fade. I've often noticed that there's a sort of laziness that accompanies that. But, more often than not, probably a morality kind of issue or an ethical issue, that it's a choice. I want to affirm this particular moral or ethical issue, and therefore I'm gonna act as though Scripture's untrustworthy. In your journey, I mean, you've dove down into the minutia of the text and the language. You've worked with manuscripts. How has textual criticism helped your faith, right? And that was the point all along for when textual criticism really became a thing, right? It was this is what it was meant to do. How has it helped your faith rather than tarnish it?
Yeah, no, that's right. I think it's deepened it, and I maybe in a couple of ways. I think we all kind of realize, okay, without God's providence, the Scriptures could never be preserved, like they are, and so in some ways, what it's doing is it's putting a material to God's providence. I know this is kind of maybe weird, but it's something I can see and touch, and say, okay, this is now kind of we can't explain it fully, comprehensively, but I think we can start to explain truly, okay, sufficiently, how God's providence did preserve His word for the church today. And I think that's been really life-giving to me. I go, oh man, there are differences, but they're not unsolvable. Now, some of them are very difficult, but they're not unsolvable. And I just kind of look at it and I go, this is amazing. You're right, to dive down all the way into the minutia and to come back up with a greater appreciation and awe of how God has preserved His word for the church. That to me is life-giving. Some might say, John, but you can't be certain about all of these variants. And some people really do want to live in a world where everything is 101% nailed down. I kind of think, though...
You mean a world without faith? Is that what
Yeah, a world with very little faith required.
Yeah.
Good. That's a great way to put it. But I've kind of seen the way in which God's preserved His word, the way in which Christian scholars go about their work. It engenders humility. And I hope I'm not using that as a buzzword today. It really does engender some humility to be able to say that, there are a relative handful of texts that I cannot be certain about, though either reading, right, theology is not hanging in the balance. I want to be clear about that. Some doctrine of God, right, it's not hanging in the balance. It might change the way we read a certain story or letter or something, but never ever doctrinal issues are really truly at stake in my thinking. But it's just humbling enough to go, man, I'm finite. The history of Scripture is messy. There were human beings involved in the copying, in their writings, giving us their estimations of which books they thought belonged in the canon, right? I mean, all of these pieces of evidence we use to help, again, retrace the steps of providence for how we have the Bible today. And I think it's helpful to me to go, you know what? I'm never going to have all of this 101% nailed down. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I have enough. I have what's sufficient and true to live today by faith in the God who ultimately authored this book. And that's yeah. I hope that helps. It's helped me, but it's also kind of humbled me in a way. And
Well, even just the notion of, once you start diving down, you're realizing all the people who gave their lives for this, right? And then the immense number of people whose shoulders we all stand on.
Totally.
That's crazy humbling to me.
Indeed.
And
Yep.
It's almost like the height of arrogance to me to act as though or to just dismiss that.
Yeah.
Whether it's for I have this moral or ethical issue I want to affirm or whatever, to just dismiss all that. Selfishly.
Yep. Yeah. No, what I like to say is, I mean, people have, we have self-deceiving hearts, and what's interesting is because I've actually encountered this exact issue. Like, well, if you start to just know that someone's got a moral issue with the Bible,
right?
And so then they start to fall back on whatever they read, like in the New York Times or Time Magazine, about the conspiratorial nature or the white male power of how we have the Bible that we have today. And it's like, well, whoa. And just, but it's interesting that they know that the Bible is a serious obstacle, right, for them, keeping them from the good life, so they have to discard it in some way. And the easiest route is, well, too many translations, too many manuscripts. But that's what Dr. Gurry, myself, the TCI, and a whole host of scholars before us, and now even with us today, I mean, we're trying to help make sense of this, so that you can't just do that. you have to really wrestle with what the text is saying, because the text itself is genuine and authentic. It's not something contrived.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah. Well, it's good stuff. I'd love to have you come back on the podcast at some point and maybe dive into a couple more passages. I'm really grateful, even though we're just meeting. Just to let you know, I'm really grateful for the work you guys are doing, and want to encourage you in that. Keep up with that. Keep doing it, and I'm very grateful to connect with you, my friends. And
thanks so much, Michael.
Thanks for being faithful to your students as well, and not trying to pull some fast moves on them, but really nurture them in the faith. I really loathe, as a professor myself, that whole mentality that, look, I get that we have to unlearn some things, right? We all got to do that, but the idea that like the Bible college or the seminary is a place so people can come and deconstruct, that you have to like meet them and tear down everything they've already learned and then rebuild it. No, let's meet people where they're at and edify them in the faith. And so I always love hearing people like yourself for doing that. So
good.
Thanks for doing that good work. And this is fun. I pointed people to your site already, but you did author, and I scrolled through it a little bit ago, but you authored a book with, where is that? I'm missing it now. The book with Peter Gurry, and what's not up here anymore. So while I'm looking for that, and I'll put it back here on the screen, tell us a little bit about the book.
I assume you mean this one.
The red one? Yes,
there
it is. Scribes in Scripture. I'm trying to find that on the website so I can...
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, this came out with Crossway back in, fall of 22? So not even 2 years old yet. But this was Dr. Gurry's and my, I think, real first sort of systematic attempt to translate as much scholarship as we could, so that someone in the pew could read a history of the Bible that's accessible. Okay. And I mean, we think we've done a lot in here, but I think two things. Because the book came out of that conference I mentioned earlier by the same name, Scribes in Scripture, we had already field tested, so to speak, this material. Much of our talks wound up in this book. Now, the book does more than we do typically in the traveling conference, but certainly not less. And so that was one of the cool things, is we felt like we had field tested this with a number of lay people already. As we started completing the manuscript, we had other lay people read it, incorporated their feedback. So it really is, to date, like our best attempt to really bring the issues down. We felt like we were demythologizing some things, okay, and trying to make a real kind of history of the Bible for the public. The second thing that we feel like we did, there aren't that many histories of the Bible that are co-authored. I don't know if you've noticed this. Most of them are single-authored, and what's interesting is, depending on the author, the book will kind of track with that scholar's interests and expertise. So if it's written by a New Testament scholar, the whole history of the Bible ends up being largely about the New Testament. Wow. You see what I mean? Yeah. Same thing with Old Testament scholars. So one of the things we really wanted to hit on, thanks for putting the TOC up here, and it's a pretty balanced account of like the whole Bible, how we got the whole Bible, Old and New Testament, according to its text, right? Part 1, that's a deep dive into the manuscripts and those variants we were talking about earlier. And then, of course, the canon, right? How do we have the books of the Bible that we have? There were lots of books in late Judaism, early Christianity. How is it that we have the 66 books in our Protestant Bible? We take some rabbit trails there. We talk about the Roman Catholic Bible and Eastern Orthodox a little bit. And then, of course, most everyone accesses the Bible through translation. And of course, we're speaking mainly to the English-speaking community there, and so we definitely wanted to address what's up with all the English translations. And so, so anyways, that's our attempt to date, to demythologize, and also to give the whole Bible a good survey of how we have each part of it. So.
Yeah. Another thing I love, about this kind of thing, and just about the whole like sort of enterprise of textual criticism in general, is it's not hiding the variance. Like, we're not trying to hide that and cover things up. Like, it's on full display, full transparency.
Exactly.
And I think that's incredibly important for people to realize that.
Yep, that's a great point.
Well, I'd love to have you back on, and I'm so glad to connect with you. I always ask people if they have a parting shot, just to quote a joke, an idiom, a saying. Do you have anything you could throw our way to leave us thinking about?
I don't know if I do.
No?
So, just read the footnotes, right?
Oh, there you go. There you go. Read the footnotes. That's a good saying. Read the footnotes. Well, are you on social media other than like your website here? Can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, I'm on X at Dr. John Meade.
Okay.
So
all right.
You can find me there. I'm on Facebook, and that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, great. Well, friends, thanks for watching or listening. Check out glossahouse.com as well, and the Glosshouse YouTube page. We're on Spotify and all of the major podcast networks. But we appreciate you supporting the podcast, Proof Text and Glosshouse. And we're going to stop there, our friends, and say we hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glosshouse can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glosshouse offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glosshouse, language resources for the global community.